Now back to Inside West Virginia Politics with Mark Curtis.
And welcome back this weekend on Inside West Virginia Politics. We're joined by Brad McElhinney, statewide correspondent for WV Metro News. Brad, education was a big issue this year, and with the Republicans now having super majorities in both the House and the Senate, they were able to expand the possibility of charter schools in the state and also create educational savings accounts, which they call Hope Scholarships. Was that probably one of the biggest headlines out of this session?
I think it was, and it happened very early on, particularly in the House of Delegates. Delegates were concerned about the coronavirus, thought that they might have to shut down within a matter of days or weeks, possibly if there was an outbreak. So the House was trying to get through its priorities quickly early in the session, and these education issues were among those. It was a real turnaround also after having had the teacher strikes of a couple of years ago, two years in a row, one regarding pay and insurance, the second one as a result of considering charter schools in West Virginia. This was a major turnaround to legislation that expanded the number of charter schools, would open it up to virtual charter schools, and then those education savings accounts would provide money to families whose students were leaving the public school system, going to private school, Catholic school, religious school, homeschooling, any of those options, providing some money to support those educational endeavors. So it was amazing to me, that kind of turnaround. And the other factor was you didn't really get that much teacher or educator pushback on site because access was so limited to the Capitol. A couple of years ago, where you got all those teachers flooding into the building, demonstrating how they felt, just didn't happen this year. It happened very quietly. That legislation was passed. Teachers at the time were in their own classrooms trying to get students back to school, in some cases teaching virtually while also teaching students in front of them. Just there was a sense that those in the education system, education employees, were overwhelmed just trying to maintain their own classrooms while this significant education policy was passing. Now, if you're someone, a family, or those who believe in education choice, this was really good news for you. A couple of ways that those ESAs are among the broadest in the nation, and that's been celebrated by people who are proponents of school choice in West Virginia. But it was incredible how those policies that were controversial in years past just quietly passed this year.
And we should mention that they also passed a bill that the teachers unions feel is very vindictive and punitive, that if in the future teachers go on strike again, that their pay could be withheld. I mean, a lot of these teachers got back pay for the days they were out on strike, but now I believe this new law gives the individual counties the authority to say, well, you went on strike, we're not paying you.
That's right, and that bill essentially clarifies what had been in West Virginia case law over the years, that strikes against the state are illegal, but it tacks on the pay component that you described. So it from the teacher perspective, it adds insult to injury. They already knew that striking against the state is unlawful, but in some cases said, you got to do what you got to do if you're pushed into it. They felt that actually spelling it out in the law is unnecessary and insulting, but then adds what they would regard as the injury to potentially withhold pay.
You mentioned the possibility of a special session, I mean, regarding the governor's tax plan. We'll talk about that in a second, but don't they have to come back into special session to pass the redistricting? I mean, we're going to create new congressional districts and 100 individual House seats. The multiple member districts will all go away. When does that happen? We're down to a minute, by the way. Big question, not much time.
Got to do that after the census data comes in, possibly September or October, I'm told. So special session will happen anyway, but that tax issue lingers. The governor said he's going to go out and educate the state about the tax situation, but he goes from a 0 to 100 vote in the House of Delegates, somehow got to get up to 51 votes if he believes it's going to pass the House.
Yeah, and one thing I want to mention, you don't have to comment on it, but they finally did the mechanism to get rid of the business inventory tax, but that's something, it passed a joint resolution of both houses. Now, correct me, it has to go to the voters and be put on a ballot, and we don't know when that happens.
See it on your ballot, general election 2022.
Gotcha.
Make a calendar date.
All right, Brad McElhinney, statewide correspondent for WV Metro News. Brad, thanks for joining us today from the Eastern Panhandle.
We say goodbye. Thank you.
Thank you, Bailey. We'll have more
Thanks
of Inside. We'll have more of Inside West Virginia Politics after this break. Stay with us.